I'm very moved by the steps that this memorial and the Holocaust Memorial and Museum have taken to turn themselves into living memorials. And I know for the Holocaust Museum that it was a difficult decision in the early years, and nothing will ever divert from the singularity of the Holocaust and the importance of just learning that history for its own sake. But it really is incredibly powerful to see the way people who go through that museum, and I'm sure this memorial as well, which I'm visiting for the first time, and they're all ready to do something. They really want to do something. And what's so important about, again, turning history into something that can be applied in real time, something actionable, is that people leave museums and memorials like this, and they will do something. And the fact that people are giving so much thought now to what that something is, I think is incredibly important. And again, the Holocaust Museum's efforts in that regard, I think, have been incredibly impactful, just judging from the high school students and others that one encounters who've gone through the museum and then immediately gone forth and become Darfur advocates or Burma advocates or Congo advocates, etc. I'm attending this gathering along with National Security Council Director for War Crimes and Atrocities, David Pressman, Stephen Rapp, the Ambassador at Large for War Crimes, and his deputy, Diane Orentlicher. And the presence of several senior administration officials here today, I think, is but one measure of President Obama's determination to prevent mass atrocity, but also his recognition that this effort requires a broad international coalition, and his conviction that governments do not have a monopoly on good ideas on anything, but certainly on this issue as well. We need to work together, we need to brainstorm together, we need to build structures together. If mass atrocity and genocide were easy to eradicate, people of goodwill would have done so long ago. But gatherings like this one remind us of the force of our convictions, the strength of our numbers, and above all, the concreteness of the mechanisms and policies that we have to put in place. That is what I hope this conference takes on. What concretely should we governments, we advocates, we historians, we educators, we museum curators, we citizens, we NGOs, what should we be doing, and what should we be doing differently in order to further reduce the likelihood of crimes that shock the conscience? I will answer this question, and I give advance warning on this, in an extremely parochial way, focusing on what I know best now, which is the United States, and three of the ways that we have recently shifted our orientation in terms of the inner workings of the U.S. government in the hopes of improving our responses. First, we governments, and again, parochial, United States, and I speak from my perspective and also from the perspective of governments, we governments must make fresh strategic commitments in this space when it comes to atrocity prevention. A fresh strategic commitment is not the same as saying never again. It's not the same as joining the consensus in 2005 at the UN summit around the responsibility to protect, along with all the other UN member states. It's not the same as voting for a Security Council resolution that includes a reference to the responsibility to protect somewhere in one of the operative paragraphs. All of these steps that I've just described are incredibly worthwhile, but a fresh strategic commitment is one that requires internal, sometimes difficult deliberation. It is one in which a head of state or a foreign minister or somebody whose voice conveys the voice of authority communicates today, in 2010, in writing or in a speech, his or her prioritization of these issues, so that diplomats and civil servants and citizens see that this is a here and now commitment with real and present implications for policy. Second, we governments must organize ourselves in keeping with these stated priorities. President Clinton, as most of you know, has rated Rwanda as his greatest regret, and he has often expressed bewilderment as to how 800,000 people could have been killed over a 100-day period without him ever having been directly asked to make a decision, without a single principals committee meeting, which is basically all the foreign policy principals gathering to tee up decisions for the president. In short, governments can improve their ownership and responsiveness to mass killing, but it requires a level of governmental organization that matches the methodical organization characteristic of the killers. Third, and very related, governments must work to systematize prevention. Now, I know this is the stable topic of conversation at every one of these conferences. Prevention, prevention, prevention. Everybody is for it. It's like being for apple pie. But it's very, very challenging, it turns out, to put into effect, given that all the political rewards cut in other directions. You never get credit, they say, for that which you have prevented. While much academic work and significant government resources have been applied to improving early warning, history has shown that an absence of information has rarely been the primary problem. Indeed, we know a good deal more today than we used to about how poverty, environmental pressures, poor governance, and state weakness raise the risk of civil conflict. We even have a variety of products produced by the government and by non-governmental sources designed to alert us when a situation has reached a tipping point, when a crisis may devolve into conflict. I think it's incredibly important to take note, actually, of how much more sophisticated that literature and those warning mechanisms has become over the last decade or two. Historically, though, policymakers have possessed significant knowledge, but have been held back by other factors, by competing policy priorities, limited understanding of the country at risk, disincentives for speaking out, political concerns, or a range of other circumstances that you can imagine. My fourth and final point, though, is that it is extremely unlikely that even the modest steps that I've described would have been taken if not for the advent of the modern anti-genocide movement, comprised of students, religious groups, and citizens from across the United States. Many of you were part of this. The kernel of the movement appeared for the first time around the time of Bosnia, but it didn't activate at all for Rwanda. However, because of Darfur, which reached its peak killing period around the 10-year anniversary of Rwanda, when commemoration was at its height, the movement has been broadened and institutionalized in very powerful ways. High school and college anti-genocide clubs have mobilized divestment campaigns, forcing state and university pension funds to divest themselves of tainted holdings. People of all faiths have marched on the Mall in Washington to protest the genocide in Darfur. Letters to the editor have been written, funds for refugees raised. Members of Congress hearing from their constituents have traveled to Kosovo, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, Congo, and Sudan to talk to the survivors of mass atrocity and to mobilize U.S. governmental efforts back home. Such films as Hotel Rwanda and such exhibits as the Holocaust Museum's Sudan exhibit have energized citizens of today and made them aware that never again is in fact a society-wide responsibility. Your reporting and advocacy on Sudan, for instance, pressures the U.S. government and other governments, but it also pressures the government of Sudan. You rightly call on the Obama administration and other government to spotlight abuses, but in doing what you do, you spotlight abuses. You are engaged in prevention every day. You are providing accountability and making the parties on the ground feel watched. If you doubt this, just get a readout of any U.S. official or any other government official's latest encounter with a government or a militia member on the ground in Sudan, for instance, or really anywhere in the world. They will complain incessantly about the inaccuracies in your work and the falsity of your claims. This is an incredible function. It's an incredible privilege. You get to be a spotlight in the same way that governments get to be a spotlight, and it really makes a difference. For that and for all you do, I know I speak on behalf of my colleagues here and on behalf of President Obama, and these days, of course, on behalf of the people of Sudan when I say thank you.